that Professor Mahmood Yakubu is about to cause a big disaster in the country by purposely denying Peter Obi's legal team access to beavers and other documentary evidence from INEC as backup to their claim of irregularity surrounding the presidential election to be topped with a 21-day deadline.
Oji, maybe because I live in Nigeria, when people say, I assure you, I get scared because I don't believe it's a prelude to non-assurance for anything. In fact, when people say, I assure you in the public space, Davido's assurance to Chioma is more tenable than their own assurance. Because too many times we've heard, I assure you, nothing is happening. The INEC chief is not supposed to be assuring anybody of anything. He's supposed to follow the law to the letter. But the truth is, in a country where you don't have rule of law, you have rule of lawyers. In 2012, the BBC has something it calls the Reith Lectures. As regard, it's done in memorial for John Reith, one of the first leaders of the BBC then. And Professor Neil Ferguson gave a lecture then in the Reith Lectures, and he called it Rule of Law and Its Enemies. In Nigeria, the sad reality is that the institutions of government have become the enemies of rule of law. This same
Ferguson? I have the book.
Neil Ferguson.
I have the book that came out of it.
You get the institutions.
Another person.
The institutions in Nigeria have become the enemies of rule of law. And you see, when that happens, what happens? It now becomes a rule of lawyers. So it's no longer the rule of law. So it's now a case of the lawyers that can get the system to favor the clients more. That's what happens, and that's what's happening here. And that's why you see that because the institutions have become the enemies of rule of law, INEC can decide to pick and choose. When the court gave an order, it was quick to use his own lawyers to go vary the order to get his own judgments. So he did pick and choose the one that favored him, but the others, he will not do it. And you see a society where the institutions become the enemies of the rule of law is a society that starts to sink steadily. And that's why Nigeria is where it is today. So we know what is happening. We know the games that are being played. If INEC claims there's nothing to hide, how are we going to believe them? If there was nothing to hide, you should be able to be quick to surrender everything to be inspected in the first place. It is obvious that there is definitely something to hide that we don't know about. And that is what is happening here. So we know. But because when people are talking and analyzing about where the raid started to beat us in Nigeria, they should not forget that when the institutions set up by the state to be able to uphold and listen to the rule of law are the ones violating the rule of law, they become the enemy of the rule of law, then you know that the country is headed south. And that's what is happening in Nigeria. So I'm happy 60 lawyers have gone there. INEC should still keep on playing the game of Teddy Picker is playing by buying time, because you know there's a statutory 21 days regulation. Probably they will be able to give what they choose to give and not what can be inspected. And let's see how this process pans out. But they should remember. And that's why we also call on the judiciary. Nigerians are watching. And the future and the furtherance of democracy will be dependent on the decisions taken. By not upholding the rule of law, we are dancing and we are playing with the fire.